Thank you. Yeah, I get extra 20 minutes because my introduction is 20 minutes. I thank WHO for inviting me here, and the Saudi FDA for supporting this, and my AHWP colleagues who have nominated me to speak on this topic. Yeah, so we will remove all this because I think you have already heard it. And I will speak a little bit about the AHWP Working Party. And this is and we're going to make it more international. Actually, we were focusing it on Asia when we started out, but we have now included quite a number of other countries that's outside Asia. And it's a group of experts, and this include industry members who will come together and with the authority, that's very good networking, and speak how we can work towards harmonization and work together in the different work groups for this particular objective. Yeah, the goals of HWP is to harmonize regulations in Asia and other regions, look at the requirements. Well, what are the necessary requirements, not only for the regulators, but the regulators supporting industry. Without the industry, there is no point to do regulations. So, but the regulators need to have this dialogue with industry. And who do we look to for this guidance? We look for GHDF, IMDRF. So we work with many global organizations, APEC, WHO, to see how we can put together a good program and recommendation for our members. We have 23 members in 2014, and as you can see that it also includes South America, so Asia is going to South America also, and Africa. In 2015, with 3 members came on board, Tanzania, Kazakhstan, and Mongolia. And we take turns to try to hold the meetings in our member economies. So maybe you will be invited to the meeting in Mongolia. It should be quite interesting. It's different from Saudi Arabia. Yeah. Regulating medical devices. I think in our discussions, we find this 3-pronged thing. And first of all, there must be some political will and vision. Without this, the other 2 will not work. And what is the political will? You know, it's to protect the citizens and to safeguard where the public is concerned, and to also arrange among governments some mutual recognition agreements. With that, policies are then put out to look into control of the health product, in this case, medical devices. Policies must also look into that healthcare must be affordable because the citizen structure is such that you really get the poor, the low income to the very rich. That's good to have policies, but if you cannot get the devices on time, it's not of much use. So yes, timely access is necessary. And how do you know that the devices meet standards? So look at international standards. So this is the kind of policies that we have to look into if we want to regulate devices. After you have the policies, then you look in your procedures. What's the mechanisms of putting all these policies in place? And there is, the registration of dealers, as we can hear, and we heard what Saudi FDA has done. A good quality system, and look at your devices. You can look at your dealers, but you must also know what they deal with, and that's the devices. Look at some common templates for submission so that they do not have to repeat themselves. And last and not least, I think it's very important to look at border controls. So border controls where you can have your customs do the declaration work with the regulators, you will be able to get some kind of control leaching of unregistered products and low quality and counterfeit products into the country. So that is some areas that we thought of when in discussing on the regulations of medical devices. So what is harmonization? Areas that is of priority that we should look into are these 6 areas, and these areas are what the playbook had then concentrated on, to say that, you know, we can have the big picture, we know what we have to do, but the playbook also looks at how do you do it. Okay, so we do go into a deeper level. What initiated it? So the initiation was actually many of the member economies in AHWP are actually in ASEAN, and ASEAN has already gone into discussion about putting in place the ASEAN Medical Device Directive to be adopted by 10 countries who are already in AHWP. So, learning from experiences, we thought it's good to have a set of guidelines for how we can discuss among member economies to see that if they do not have regulations, look at these guidelines. There is this implementation guideline, which, as I have mentioned, you know, that goes into the how and not so much the what. I think the what we have already, you know, are quite aware of. And hopefully we will have predictable and harmonized regulatory environment. And this is very important for the economy of each country. And really regulators, you know, we want to help our citizens, but we also have to look after the economy of our country. So if we are able to work with industry so that they can bring in more business into our country, it helps all the way, you know, with everybody. So the concept of the playbook. It actually was a result of about 4 or 5 months' work, of which we had to read, you know, many reference documents, and that we would cover these 6 areas which we have highlighted here in this slide, and to look at how the different aspects of regulations will also affect different aspects of a framework, the whole framework, not only regulations, but, you know, actually the operations and things of the industry that's coming on board. So, yes, I think you can read that. Chair says that I cannot read the slide. So, and what do we take as reference? And these are areas and documents that we have read and which we picked, and we have found that a lot of the WHO guidelines are, you know, very useful for us, and we have adopted it. But our underlying document reference is the GHTF, because the GHTF, having had the experience of the 5 founding members, US, Canada, Australia, Japan, and Europe, comes together to tell us what would be the best way that they themselves have found out that they could have done and adopted if they had to redo their processes. So we looked at the GHTF documents quite in depth, and many of the recommendations are actually from GHTF recommendations. The other area that I want to highlight is the ISO standards, because without international standards and the application of the standards in each country, we also will find that review of products then become very cumbersome. So many companies, they do follow standards. So that's really important for the regulators to look that if they have reached a level where they can follow the international standards, you know, then it's much easier to do a lot of assessments. Yeah. Now, so what is the the playbook? The playbook gives a framework. So you see the image that it's, you know, pretty simple. You just have the roof and you have your different floors and a pillar. But then that's the basic that you would want to look at if you are thinking of implementing controls in your country. And you fill them up. First, putting in some basic more controls when you feel more comfortable. And you can go into more depth, more areas where you would want to be a bit more specific. And then you can have full harmonization framework with other countries. So that's what the playbook likes to provide, a basic framework, the basic principles. Yeah. The table of contents is then given that what's the objective. I brought a hard copy, fairly useful for those senior citizens who doesn't like to read electronic copies. And the objective of the playbook, what are basic regulatory controls, and what should be put in when you want to be a bit more advanced. Where you should put your legislation and your framework, have your policies. This is all sort of spelled out. And think of phasing in implementation considerations. We cannot do everything at one go. You will, with the Singapore experience, we find that we stumble quite a bit if we try to do too much. So we had to actually change some of our phased-in implementation to make it even more phased, by extending time lines. Very important is manpower considerations, and where do you look at this? You can't employ a whole lot of officers at one go, because you may not need them at the beginning. So look for good and officers who have your basic requirements. And manpower resources are not even in the whole regulatory branch, because different manpower requirements for different stages are different, obviously, so you have your administrations, you have your screeners, you have your reviewers, you have your approvals. So you don't really need them all at one time, and you need to train them at what is their level of responsibility. So teasing out the level of responsibility is something that the playbook tries to put up. And the last chapter, which is the chapter 7, gives you the essential principles of which you would want to look and make sure that the product, the device, has in place, right? How to see what is sufficient and not sufficient for the different risk class is also some consideration that the playbook highlights. So this is the elements of it. The different chapters are there. You must know why you're doing what, as your baseline, and you move up. And with every level going up, it is very important that all officers and all staff, and especially the bosses, know why you do it. If they know why you do it, then you can get a better cooperation for a longer term, because staff tends to join and leave the organization. There is some steps of moving forward after we have done the playbook. And these are the areas that we have found is being asked of now from AHWP. The guidance documents, how to build training and capacity for the officers, and we must go into international collaboration. This has been mentioned many times, I think, in the talks that we have heard. So the guidance documents. So what is the next level that we need to go? You can have a very high level document to say that, okay, these are the policies. So the next line, how do you interpret the high level document? From the Singapore experience, we can have a very nice medical device definition, but you will get the gap items. You will get a company coming to you and says that I am now putting together a little farm that is growing maggots. Is this a medical device? And it was seen in Singapore, and when they approached our officer, the officer says, no, this is not a medical device. And then it went for discussion as one of the feedback, and the director says, no, it's a medical device, you know. So it changes. So how do you interpret that treatment, diagnostic of a medical condition? Do maggots do that, fall in that area? So we do have issues of it. Aesthetic equipment, does it fall under medical devices? If this equipment removes a wart, yes, it's a medical equipment device. If it makes my face a little bit smoother, which of course I would like to use it, but that's an aesthetic device. So where do you draw the line? How would your officers give consistent direction to the companies that come? So these are the second line the guidance documents which we hope to discuss and see how it can be produced. And then you can make interpretation more consistent. Okay. So the next area is having all this. Now you've got to train your officers. So how do you put together? And in this area, the main factor that is an obstacle is funding. So who pays for the training? Especially if it's for regulators. Regulators are quite poorly paid. I don't know about SFDF, but in Singapore they are poorly paid. So, they cannot afford to attend the training sessions. So where do you get the budget to hold it? For the industry, there are some small, medium enterprises who also will have some budget constraint. So I think funding is an issue. But training and capacity building is a must. You can't have a set of regulations and nobody knows, what it all means, right? So that's important. And the approach is to have this international collaboration and cooperation to see how we can learn from each other, to see how we can join our resources, to see how we can make things, more productive and use our knowledge from some experts and use it and spread it out to other organizations. So this is where international collaboration is very important. And in AHWP, this is what we try to do. So as we come together and we do our discussions and we try to put some awareness of certain products that's coming your way. We are no longer talking about plasters and sutures. We are now talking about holographic equipment. How do you have how do you really review a holographic device? Anyway, I have no idea how to do that. But it's all coming, software, 3D printing, telemarketing, telehealth, So how do we control all this? And it will reach our borders very, very quickly because the world is really very porous. So this is an area which we feel that, yes, come together and let's work together. Thank you.